Welcome to the show, gearheads. We just watched the Japanese Grand Prix. Max Verstappen and Checo Perez won, 1-2 for the fourth time this season. That's a record. First time ever in Formula One history that they opened the season with 4 straight 1-2s. This is John Massengale in the studio in Austin, Texas, joined by my friend Jonathan Green. How are you, Mr. Green? What did you think of the race?
Well, I mean, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of good racing.
Yes.
A lot of good racing. And I was about to make a chirpy comment about Red Bull, but I guess the real serious side of it is when you see a performance like that, and when you know that it's in the backyard of Honda, and you know what Red Bull are achieving. I mean, 4 consecutive 1-2s. I mean, there's dominance and there's just obliteration. I mean, we're talking. They are so far ahead.
Bob Varsha, do you have any alliteration to go with that obliteration?
Just keeping in mind that Ferrari was one of those 1-2 finishes. I'm kind of hung up on this paradox. People talk all the time about whether there's enough passing in Formula One. And we say this is what you have to have is performance differentials between the cars, a delta, as Anthony Davidson mentioned during the broadcast on Sky. And we had that because of all the alternative strategies being run. We thought before the race that the fact that all 3 Pirelli compounds would be used during this race, and that's the way it turned out. And, the result was lots and lots of passing. And if that's what you wanted, that's what you got. Other than that, though, I didn't think it was a particularly exciting race.
No, there was no real jeopardy, was there?
No, jeopardy is just the right word. There was no jeopardy. Terrible day for Williams, obviously. Good day for Ferrari. Just kind of a jumble of stories in there, topped by yet another dominating performance by Red Bull.
Yeah. And I see Chris Medland has joined us from Suzuka. Chris, what's your take?
Good afternoon. Yes, I mean, Bob summed up pretty well there, actually. As he said, kind of terrible one for Williams. I was like, yeah, I agree. But also, performance-wise, how bad did that look for Alpine as well? Faman was just walking next to me, so I was thinking of grabbing him. But I'll see if I can get him a bit later when hopefully he'll give us a bit of a calmer perspective on matters. I'm going to try and get to Williams at some stage to see what the damage is to Albon's car and if there's a concern there for China, because without a spare, we said it, didn't we, just before the race started, that without that spare, that any issues for that team, and it could hurt them at the next race. So we'll try and find that out. I thought Checo was very solid this weekend, did everything he needed to do to get that second place by Max. But I thought there's signs here, and we've spoken about it before, but Ferrari really are heading in the right direction, aren't they, as a team?
Yeah.
Because strategically, they got it spot on with Leclerc to get him up from, he started 8th, didn't he? He was running 7th for a lot of the early stint, got him up to 4th in that race when there was close pace kind of gaps between McLaren and Ferrari and Mercedes in that fight. And then Carlos pretty serenely getting clear of Sainz and coming home 3rd. And at one point looked like he might pick up the fastest lap again too. And then Max did pip him to that late on, but it was close. Yeah, they're just, you have more confidence now that Ferrari are going to pick up the big results when they're on offer, but also when they're not on offer, they're going to pick up the best result they can get. And that's going to keep them closer this year for a lot longer.
Couldn't agree more. Yep. I just feel that Vasseur is that voice of reason that seemingly and trust, I think, more importantly, that both Leclerc and Sainz, even though he's off, both have with the way the team's running. I mean, there was no histrionics. The only time Leclerc got mad was, I think, in FP2 when he only just got out in the last couple of minutes or whatever, and was like, "What are we doing?" But
Yeah, but you know what?
They did leave it too late, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there was enough going on. I mean, I know it wasn't the most exciting, like you said, Jeopardy, but there was a lot with all the tire strategy and all that. There was enough,
There was a lot of interest. Yeah.
I'd kept me awake at 2 a.m, but but yeah. But I'm just thinking about some of the stuff that happened towards the end. I mean, I got some pretty good. There was some great moves by Russell there at the end. There was some great racing by Alonso. We were just flabbergasted watching Alonso hold off Piastri. That was a master stroke from him.
Using the patented science technique from Singapore last year of just slowing down enough to keep the guy behind him within DRS range, so that he could then take off. The guy could open his rear wing and keep the guy behind him, in this case George Russell, back there where Alonso wanted him.
Yeah, and it was fun watching some of those coming through, right? And by the way, let me step back to Red Bull, and you talk about the incredible dominance. Did you guys notice the pit stops?
Oh,
the last 3 pit stops.
2 seconds.
For the 2.0 for Verstappen, 2.1 for Checo, and 2.1 for Checo's one before that. I mean,
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody else was 2.3, 2.4 at their, and we were going, oh, those are great. But, those tenths make a difference. In fact, was it Lando that, I can't remember who it was, but one of those gaps made the difference and lost a place.
Those pit stops are faster than Horner can text.
That's the first time we've mentioned that story. Pre-race or post.
I know, and
They're
I still
beautiful.
Come on, man.
Well, that story's a long way from over.
Yeah. I was gonna ask Chris, but just I'm amazed how they've managed to bury it as far as they have.
Yeah. Well, I don't even want to talk about it. Chris, what else is happening, Chris?
I was just saying, there's no official update on that at the moment, which is why there hasn't been much talk about it. It sounds like it might go to an employment tribunal, which will be interesting if it does, because that will move things on and might mean more comes out that we can then, I guess, judge better. But I don't think that's actually been confirmed yet either. That's kind of rumor that there might be one. But for now, I've just parked myself smack bang in the middle of the paddock trying to see who I can grab. I really do want to speak to Fred Vasseur. I can see James Vowels coming down right now, but I think that's to a prearranged interview. So I'll go and do my usual trick of hovering nearby to pick up the scraps when he finishes with the TV channel. But yeah, I think it'd be great to get Vasseur when he comes back from the podium.
What's your gut feeling on
where he is right now?
What's your gut feeling on Williams' situation now?
Honestly, initial gut feeling would be that they may well be down a chassis now. That was a big hit.
Yeah.
And it's a tight turnaround. So whether it's possible for them to get it ready for China, I'm not too sure. So that's why I'm so keen to try and get James. He's doing photos at the moment.
Yeah, just keep hovering there. But when's the last time this has happened, guys? I mean,
I know.
Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Well, yeah, sorry.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. In history, I'm thinking.
Isn't it ironic, though, that the strategy, if that's the right word, for not having a third chassis once the rules changed to prevent teams from building up a car beyond a certain point, was initially used, I think I'm right in saying, by Braun F1 in 2009 when they romped with the revolutionary double diffuser and Jenson Button won his world championship. They didn't have a third chassis for the early races. They were really run on a shoestring at that point. And I think that's really one of the great stories in Formula One in recent years with Braun and what they were able to accomplish. But the downside is what Williams is experiencing right now.
Yeah, they've come a long way since the team that won it. They bought it for $1 or something?
Yeah, bought it for $1. Had no sponsorship for a long time.
Amazing.
And
it was something that Toto Wolff actually said as the head of that team as it is now. But he said on Friday that when he was at Williams, for people that don't know, he was an investor and part of the Williams team before he joined Mercedes in 2013. He said there was plenty of times that they went a long way into the season without a spare chassis. Times were so tough then. But obviously, teams are meant to be more financially sound now.
Toto is. He's a billionaire now.
Yeah. Well, big time, yeah. So I think that's why it's been a bit more of a shock this year. But as we said, the same happened with Alpine. And they'll be glad to have got through these opening races, at least with cars intact, even if they were not quick cars.
Chris, is there any talk of what's going to happen at Alpine? Because something's got to, hasn't it?
There isn't actually at the moment, because Bruno Fairman's going to stay on as team principal. He was interim and is staying on there. He says he needs to restructure and rebuild. And I get the impression that's exactly what he says he's now doing and is going to be doing for a while.
So there's a lot of people
Which is
going to
what
wake up
James Vowels
tomorrow
is trying
morning.
to do at Williams. He's having to restructure and rebuild, and he lamented. I don't know if it was in. I think it was in Saudi Arabia. How the team is so under the gun in terms of resources and procedures and protocols and everything to get work done. Just the sheer day-to-day things you need to do in a Formula One team, including making spare parts. So everything gets pushed back, and things like this happen. You don't have a third car, not because you can't afford or you don't know how to make it, but because you don't have time in the present business between these 24 races in this season.
Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of people are going to wake up tomorrow morning and look at the gap. So Perez was 12 and a half seconds behind Verstappen, and Sainz was 8 seconds behind Perez, so 20 seconds behind. So it's going to look like, another domination, which it was, but I mean, there's just more going on. It's one of those things that's hard to tell people who are not, deep fans of the sport.
Yeah. I think China's going to be interesting for the reasons that you just heard there. That it's 4 or 5 years since we've been there.
Yeah, 2019.
I've been to that track, and it doesn't get used that much in comparison to most international tracks. There's GT racing there. I've done GTs there. But in Formula One terms, obviously, it's since COVID and all the rest of it that there was no way.
Yeah, and COVID was what caused the first, because they're so strict with their rules. But Chris, what are you hearing about, like, the potential surface of the track and everything else? Have you heard anything?
So China's always been an interesting one because of the way it's built and the land it's built on. It does move, like the track surface moves every time you go there. This is something that Tom McCulloch was explaining actually pre-race to us on the Aston Martin briefing, that it's kind of built on, I think he said polystyrene. They've got polystyrene blocks in places underneath it that were how they kind of dealt with the topography of the area. And yeah, it does mean the track surface moves, so you get different bumps in different places, and it does mean that they resurface it a lot. So it could be a real learning curve for everyone on Friday. But also, that looks like being a front limited circuit where your front tires are going to be the differentiator, like how you look after them. And if you get graining, because it could be cooler conditions, we quite often get that in China, that is going to make it a Ferrari track. That's going to bring it closer to Ferrari, like Melbourne was. And Red Bull are ready for that. They think that could be one where, the gap's smaller, if not small. And then obviously we head to Miami, where it doesn't look like it'll be as Red Bull biased as this circuit was here at Suzuka. So I think we're actually going to a couple of tracks where we'll see smaller gaps. Where China's the one that, if the conditions are right, it really could make it a close fight between Ferrari and Red Bull for the win there, based on what we're seeing from Ferrari right now and saw from them in Melbourne. So, yeah, I'm kind of excited to see how that one plays out.
Good. Yeah.
The track, I assume, has to be rehomologated.
No, I don't think so. As long as they haven't made any changes, it will have FIA homologation as a Grade 1 circuit. So, only if they've made changes, but I don't believe they have.
They haven't.
So it should be fine. But even if it did, that normally happens without us even knowing, when the race director on the way here would stop off and do a visit for a day and just tick a box. So, yeah, it used to happen quite regularly that a race director would be arriving at one circuit, having visited another, just to sign it off.
Yep, I was just checking some of the comments on YouTube, and David Lawrence, Albon messing up a chassis for a second consecutive weekend. My goodness. Now that's a little, what do you think, Jonathan? This was probably leaning towards Ricardo.
Sorry, are we talking to Sargent or are we talking to Ricardo?
Albon, he said messing up a chassis for a second, the collision with Ricardo.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Yeah. And there was, racing incident. I agree with all the commentators. But I said to you as it happened, when is Ricardo's season going to start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Albon looked
It was funny.
genuinely angry in the garage when we saw him talking with team members.
Mhm.
Well,
He looked
Well,
really
let's ask about
pissed
that now.
off.
I'm gonna get James Vowels on the walk, I think, on the way back up to Williams. So, James, if I could just ask firstly, what's the situation, if you're able to tell already, with Alex's chassis after that crash?
So to give some colour of what we're doing, we're just walking back up the pit lane here towards our garage, where I will go inside and have a look myself. I saw some initial photos of it. I think it looks repairable, but it should now be back here and we'll be able to inspect it properly.
And what was your thoughts on that collision with Daniel?
As far as I go racing instant, I could see it almost unfolding from Alex's perspective. You can see he backed out a bit early, realising Daniel didn't see him. It wasn't purposeful from Daniel in that circumstance. And equally, Alex couldn't brake any harder than that to get himself out of that position. So I don't think it's either one's fault, particularly. That's just unfortunately racing.
It must have been your worst nightmare, though, seeing one car out at the start. And then with Logan, it looked some encouraging signs and then a mistake that took him out of the race later on.
I have pretty bad nightmares, so let's see. But you have to describe the last few weeks as within our sport, this is unusual. You don't have 3 large crashes to this extent. And there's no team up and down here with the resilience to keep providing performance updates and build spares and get through this amount of accidents. So we've got to take a step back, take stock of what we got, quite literally and figuratively and literally in that circumstance, and then rebuild the team and come back to China fighting. My encouraging element is what you just brought up. Logan there were same age tires, was overtaking cars, fighting with cars and moving his way forward up in that field. Yes, he made a mistake. He was absolutely on a knife edge in terms of performance, but what you can't deal with is if the race car's not quick enough. And we do have the capability to fight for points, but we clearly haven't got it right across the first element of the season. So that's down to us now to take stock, get on with it, and come back in China swing.
I guess you'll be flat out and getting ready for China as well, back in the factory now.
I'm afraid pretty much you described it well. Whatever happens, the factory would have been flat out, just producing update performance parts. But now we're just flat out building up the stock section as well at the same time.
Okay, well, I'll let you go and have a look at the damage. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I do. He's such a breath of fresh air.
He is, isn't he?
Every time you listen to him, you're like, yeah, okay, that's pretty honest.
Yeah, and I like the way he
Well,
started.
listen to him. He's a better radio broadcaster than me. I think you were about to say it, John. He's like, let me paint the picture.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. He's doing all of our jobs. You know, I should ask you, Chris, and then James is doing it for us.
Yeah,
Right.
it was a short walk, I can tell you. So we were stood outside and genuinely stood right out the back of the garage there, and then he went straight in when we finished that interview. So I'd love to hover there for when he comes back out and find out if there's any update. But I will see if by the time we go off air, if I see anyone else from Williams who will have looked at the chassis, whether they can tell us any more. But it may well be a few more hours yet until they have a kind of clear answer on that, and they'll start scanning it. Essentially, they do what they call non-destructive testing to kind of see where breakages could be and weaknesses are on the chassis. So that might take a little bit of time.
And good point about Logan Sargent looking good for a while there, but man, his nightmare of a season continues.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, both. Go, Chris.
Sorry, go ahead, John. I was going to say, sorry, I'll jump in then. It was one of those moments when you saw yellow flag out and then saw Sargent's name come up on the screen and you thought, oh, God, no. But the fact that in a sense, it was a very similar mistake to a lot of drivers this weekend. A few have been wide there. No one's hit the barrier there this weekend. We've seen that in the past. And it kind of felt like he was just trying to bail out early because he knew he'd got it a bit wrong on the exit curb, but then locking up meant he couldn't turn the car. Glad he didn't do any damage. But yeah, that kind of, again, just adds a little bit of a sour note to the end of what was just a solid performance, I think, in race terms. I think they lost out in the pit stops a bit too easily, and it meant he couldn't hold on to the kind of group that were fighting for the points.
Yeah, and how many times did we see drivers? We saw Leclerc go wide, and I think it was because of this tire strategy. They were trying to eke every final lap out of all the tires. I think it was up and down with so many people doing different tire strategies.
Yep.
Chris, what is happening around you? We hear a couple of voices.
I'm actually trying to find out where in the queue I can end up to speak to Fred Vasseur. So I'm just getting in the way of the TV crews right now.
Well, let's sneak.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's sneak in a quick break, and when we come back, we'll see who Chris can wrangle, and we'll continue to break down the Japanese Grand Prix right after this. All right, let's see what's happening on YouTube. Actually, quite a bit. Bunch of night owls up. Somebody said. Let's see.
Vampires.
TW said he got a nap in about midway.
So did I.
The truth comes out.
Aha.
Kevin Kelly
Yeah.
said the Williams accounting department is stressing. Yeah, that's probably true.
I tried to type in that, but John kept saying, "You still awake?"
Look at this. How proud I got.
The takeoff. Once again, the American helicopter will leave.
We're listening, Chris.
I lost you guys.
We're listening.
No, we're
Oh, I
listening.
see, sorry. No, I just unmuted, and that's just the sound of the tannoy. I was like, oh, it's got quiet. How long we got on the break? I'm trying to see if I can stalk Helmut Marko.
How long we got,
I haven't heard from
Casey,
him for
about a
while, have
minute?
we? He's normally a rogue.
About minute 15.
Oh, well, Helmut Marko is always good for a quote. Ask him how the skiing's going.
Yeah, he is, isn't he?
Yeah,
I will see if I can, but he's not always chatty.
Oh, TW says Danny.
shot of him sitting right next to Verstappen under the red flag at the beginning of the race,
Yeah.
seated in the garage.
TW says Danny may get one or two more chances to prove himself. Jonathan, that's when you were asking.
Yeah. He's running out, and
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
I mean, I say that out of we all love Danny,
sure.
but Yuki is driving. I mean, take nothing away from Yuki. He is doing the business.
Yeah. David Lawrence, he says, good morning from BWI Airport, waiting for my 5 a.m. flight. Thanks for keeping me up.
My word.
Oh dear.
BWI.
I've been through that airport a few
Which
times.
one?
And it is a ghost town.
Which
I'm
one?
sure.
What is BWI? Baltimore, Washington?
BWI, Baltimore Washington International.
Okay, yeah,
It's Baltimore's big municipal airport,
yeah.
Well,
big Northrop Grumman factory.
may as well fly. There's no bridges.
Somebody else who I think has to be
Stop.
pretty relieved at the end of
Coming
that
back,
race is Pirelli.
Hold on.
Yes. Good call.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60 as the official cybersecurity partner in Mercedes AMG Petronas Formula One team. CrowdStrike protects against cyber threats so the team can focus on what matters, their next win. The revolutionary cloud-native unified CrowdStrike Falcon platform harnesses the speed and power of the cloud to protect and defend organizations of all sizes against increasingly complex threats, stopping breaches before they happen. Because on and off the track, the stakes couldn't be higher. A split second can make the difference between victory and defeat. When every second counts, protection shouldn't slow you down. It should fuel your momentum. CrowdStrike. Protection at every turn. To learn more, to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, boys. What else?
Well, I was painting you guys a little picture,
during
actually. I've snuck inside the Red Bull hospitality unit, and they're playing some lovely calming jazz in here, which I don't know if this is just a sign of, it used to be hardcore techno they used to blast out when they won races, but change in approach. They're all chilling out with a bit of jazz. So
did you say lovely?
Just come to speak. I did say lovely. What's wrong with lovely?
Because
Nothing.
Max,
That's what Max
that's
says.
what Max says after every race. It was a lovely race. We've decided that it's a bet.
There's a bet there somewhere.
Well, I think I've explained this to you guys before. I'm pretty sure that's a term that comes from a 18 plus rated video.
Oh, that's right. We had this whole
somehow is then-
conversation.
Yeah, that somehow has then crept into the language that's used from the pit wall sometimes. So I think that might be the case. But anyway, moving on from that topic,
Right.
Christian Horner here, who has just overseen another Red Bull 1-2, which I imagine is particularly satisfying given the fact that it was a Ferrari 1-2 last time out. And once again, we've come to Japan off the back of a bit of a setback for the team, and you've responded in style.
I think it was important to come here, particularly Honda's home race as well, and bounce back. It's a track that the drivers love. Max has always been very strong here, but Checo, I have to say, as well, has had a very strong weekend. So a 1-2 finish, fastest lap, pole position, fastest pit stop, an all-round excellent team performance.
Now, I don't want to make this seem negative, but do you also see that you're having to really keep pushing hard here, because the gap from Max to P2 here 6 months ago was the same as the gap from Max to P8, I think, yesterday in qualifying. Are you seeing that field closing in?
Yes, it is. There's always going to be, with stable rules, there's always going to be
Convergence.
Convergence is the word that I'm looking for. There's always going to be convergence with stability. So, but again, we're here 6 months later, different conditions, cool, not hot. It was a bit warmer today. but it's another sample of how we fare where we're at.
Well, you mentioned Checo there. How important is it right now? I guess the driver market's pretty fluid. There's a lot of talks going on that he's delivering from the very start of this season.
It's very important for him, and he's doing everything that's asked of him. And I've always said it would be Checo's seat to lose. He's very popular in the team. He's a great team player, and he's delivering the results.
Is it also starting to look like if it weren't to be Checo that stayed next year, if he didn't retain it himself, that you'd be looking elsewhere? Because we don't hear Yuki Tsunoda's name mentioned much around this part of the paddock, and Daniel Ricciardo again with another tough day.
Yeah, it's great to see Yuki getting a point, particularly in Honda's home race. So another strong drive by him. But of course, we're in a luxury position where with a car like we have, there's a huge amount of interest to drive on, to drive a Red Bull car.
Is the guy that finished third today a serious contender if needed?
Well, look, I think he's done a great job. He's putting out the best possible advert for himself. So, the great drive by him. But I was very pleased to see our drivers first and second.
Well, and can you follow that up though in China? We were talking about it a little bit ago on the show, and is that going to be a track that maybe brings Ferrari a bit closer to you? Do you think?
It could well be. I mean, it's a different surface. We've not been there for a few years. It's a good track. High speed, low speed, that long straight. So I'm sure it'll be a good race. I think sprint races there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's front limited normally, and
that first corner is brutal on the front tires, and but it'll be good to be back in China.
Yeah, well, we look forward to that, and we will admit we do look forward to people putting pressure on you guys. But well done this weekend. Very impressive performance.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Good question.
I try.
Yeah, no, I mean, but I love the way you put it about science too, because that does. I mean, that's got to be the topic now. Checo is doing everything, as Christian says, but Sainz is also doing everything to put himself in the shop window.
Yeah, I think that was the point there that I got the feeling he was very keen to push at the very end of that was, hey, we started talking about the fact it was a 1-2 and we're pretty much perfect here this weekend. And you're going, could this guy replace Checo? Which is a fair point. It's not really the weekend for that.
No, I agree.
It's hard to argue about against what Checo just did.
Yeah. And he didn't use the word lovely once.
God.
While we were in the break, and you probably didn't hear it, Chris, I mentioned that somebody else I think has to be relieved, if not pleased, with the weekend is Pirelli.
Yeah.
There was a definite question mark, and when there's a question mark, particularly when it comes to tires, which are so critical to performance and safety and everything else, I think there was a certain amount of whistling and looking the other way from Pirelli about what the tires were going to do in this very unpredictable situation. As it happened, they came through and Pirelli shined, but could have been a bit different, I suppose.
Potentially. I don't think there was a safety concern at any stage, put it that way. But I know what you mean. It could have been that we had the odd tire that some people were complaining about massively. I don't think anyone was delighted at any point with the way their car was handling on any of the three compounds because they just didn't get the running they got on Friday. But I prefer to see that. I like to see it when teams have to react on the fly. So I think that was, I feel like McLaren got it wrong, pitting Norris early because they didn't read the fact that Mercedes got it wrong with their strategy. And this is something Mercedes have actually already explained. They've been quite good at giving some pointers immediately after the race that kind of says this is what we were trying to do. And they felt that at the restart, by starting on the hard tyres, it opened up the potential for a one-stop if they could go hard, medium. But it also did mean that they could go with 2 extra stops because they had 2 sets of hard tyres. And the hard tyre just did not perform well for them. So they lost out at the start of that stint, or the start of that restart, essentially, and came on strong in the final kind of phase of the race. But they were saying, because we didn't know how it's going to perform at that stage. We took a bit of a gamble and it didn't quite pay off.
Hey, so we're excited for Yuki getting a point at home, but he also achieved something else. He was tied for 11th last week. He's now 1 point ahead of the guy behind him, Ollie Behrman. So he's broken the tie with Ollie.
Yeah, rub it in.
Gosh. Hey, so what did you think I'll ask you first, Jonathan. What do you think of Lewis Hamilton's comments when he said, "Should I let Russell by?"
I just think.
I mean, it's just so rarely you ever hear that, right?
Yes, but also it's a bit like Sainz, picking up his game. I think Hamilton is at the best of times. At his best, he's a very good team player, and he knows what Mercedes have done for him. And even though he's off now, he's realised he's becoming the team player that perhaps back in earlier days he wouldn't have been. That was the right decision. That was the right call.
Bob Varsha, you have a smirk on your face. What do you think about what Jonathan said?
Well, I agree with it. I was thinking back to Lewis Hamilton we knew in
yeah,
07, 08, 09.
with Alonso.
And then, with Alonso. And then when he went to Mercedes, partnering Nico Rosberg.
Yeah.
It wasn't all sweetness and light. We've said before, Frank Williams once said, "The great drivers are complete bastards because they have to be."
Mm.
And I think there's a certain amount of that. Stain's not the right word, but I think you'll find that element of the personality of all the great drivers. Some more, some less, but yeah, there's a certain amount of ruthlessness and.
But
it's tough business.
Yeah, and I would add to that, you're seeing it with Alonso and Stroll. You're seeing this sort of sage wisdom of the guy that's been there, done that, got the T-shirt. And Alonso's been pretty gracious when it comes to let's work this out. And yet he's still as competitive as ever. So don't get me wrong, Hamilton's not lost his edge, but I just think there's a sort of reality to, hey, this guy's faster than me today, and therefore, so.
And it could pay him back down the road.
Yeah,
he's at least that smart. But heavy lies the crown on the king, and given what guys like Alonso and Hamilton have done in their careers, they can afford to be gracious when the moment arrives.
I think it'll rally back up again in terms of Hamilton's sort of attitude against Leclerc. I don't think that the copaceticness of Sainz and Leclerc will be the same with Hamilton at all. Hamilton's there for a reason. Leclerc is the number one driver, and yet here comes the 7-time world champion.
Right. With over 100 poles and 100 victories and so many achievements in his career.
And yet, if they get it right, the idea of them being a force to tour against Verstappen will be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And led by Vasseur, who also is a fan of Hamilton's, as well as Leclerc.
Yeah.
So, there's some interesting combos there.
Speaking of interesting team radios, Esteban Ocon's, I'm pushing. What are you talking about? I am pushing.
Yeah. I always think,
I
always think it's funny when they say in motor racing, an engineer says, it's almost like stating the obvious. Could you go faster, please? I'm doing 195.
Yeah, right. Push.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's
My favorite's when they say, "Okay, we got to save fuel, so go
but
fast,
push,
save
and tires,
but still keep pushing."
Yes.
All right. Let's get our final break in. You're listening to Speed City. We'll be back after these messages. Kevin Kelly, I've had 4 Jamesons so far. Shocked I'm still up. I think we heard a couple of those on the call when you called in.
I think you refueled before the race started. I think you topped up.
A lot of people saying they're not going to be up for China.
It's the red flag that got him. He didn't know whether to top up the Jamesons or sit in his pit.
That's good.
I think that was the problem. He got thrown. He went on the
Nelson,
wrong tires.
D. Nelson and David Lawrence are having a discussion. D says if Danny Rick gets fired, Drive to Survive is over. No Gunther, no Danny, no fun.
That's true.
David says they live for the start of the 23. They'll be fine, D. But I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards what D said. I think that's a problem a little bit. They got to find a way to get Gunther on somehow more.
They'll just go to his house.
yeah. They'll do whatever he wants probably.
He's still around, isn't he? He's Miami ambassador now. He's doing stuff like that. Where I think he's going to be in and around F1 like no problem.
It's very true. He's not. He hasn't gone anywhere yet. He's on German TV and Miami. Boy, Miami. Did you see their social media? They were so excited to have Gunther.
They got him a coffee.
I mean, yeah. Well, and they were like rolling out the red carpet, and it was like, come on, y'all are just gushing. Oh,
right. Gunther.
I know it's great.
What? Okay, Chris. Vettel? No Vettel.
No Vettel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like Seb. I think he's a good character to have around, but my pretty strong indications from Mercedes are if Andrea Kimi Antonelli proves himself capable of handling an F1 car and has a solid F2 season and gets super license points, he's who they want to put in. And I don't think Seb tops their list as an alternative.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Damon Hill put out a story saying exactly that, which is, he's past his sell by.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
The Speed City F1 post-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. Jonathan, David Lawrence.
Sorry to cut you off, John.
Go.
I've got someone we've been praising a lot here, Sergio Pérez. Checo, you've just had a very strong weekend. Why were you so happy with the car here? Because 6 months ago, you were struggling here, weren't you?
Yeah. I think it was probably my worst weekend of last year. You know, the confidence was at its lowest. We were playing around with the car and just making things worse. And I think this year we took a step back, and I think we are in a good track. We are in a good momentum with the team, and we just have to keep this momentum going because I think the confidence is with us now. Now that we can be strong in tracks like this, we can be strong anywhere.
I was going to say, we've got China coming up next. I mean, you've been right there in most races this season. Just how much of a personal boost are you taking from the way you've started the year as well?
Yeah, good. I think it's a good momentum. The momentum is with us, and we just have to keep chipping away step by step.
And just finally, are you feeling that support from the team as well? Christian Horner speaking very positively about you just now.
Yeah, definitely. I feel all the support from the team. The team is going through a great momentum, and we just have to keep it with us.
Thank you very much, Checo. Well done today.
Cool. Different guy.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Even the fact he wanted to talk was one side of it. It's quite often I get sort of waved away if I try and wave a mic towards Checo. So, that shows his confidence.
Yeah, it's what I was saying about Logan Sargent in the pre-show. It's the confidence is so much of the game of Formula One. You know, we've seen it over and over.
And I said in the pre-show, one of the things that he has admitted is that perhaps he was doing too much tinkering pre-race.
Yeah.
Changing the car too much over a weekend when he really didn't need to. And I think the answer was lying on the other side of the garage, which is, he may not drive the same way as Verstappen, but the equipment he's got is good enough to do what he did today.
David Lawrence wants to know, Jonathan, speaking of radio, can we discuss the Stroll radio, please? He says question mark.
I'm going to cut you off again, John. I'm
Go for it.
Today, I'm tired. I've got Laurent Mekies here with me, and a bit of a tale of two halves today. So let's start with the positive, Laurent. Another point for you, Kit, is home race and beating all of those other teams around you.
Yeah, it's a fantastic result. Yesterday we were P10, P11 on the grid. It was our first row as we have beaten, the midfield, which is the guys we are competing with. Anything more was out of reach today, making it stick, with Yuki. He drove fantastically, beautiful overtake, as you have seen, a great pit stop from the guys as well. So, getting to P10 on a day where none of the top 10 cars are retiring was something. So not only we topped the midfield today, but we also managed to put it there despite the fact that everybody finished. So it's only 1 point, but it's a point that means a lot more for us in our progression. So step by step, we are certainly feeling that we are on the right track. Very unfortunate for Daniel. He has shown yesterday that he had the pace. These sort of things happen. It's a lap one incident. He was very exposed. Actually, both are very exposed, running the medium tires with all the guys behind them on soft. So I'm sure they felt slow and in an awkward situation. So we did not help them much there. And unfortunately, this sort of thing happens. But we'll certainly fight with both cars very strongly in China.
Does it feel like you have to pick Daniel up a little bit right now, though, that results aren't quite going his way? And as you say, things were looking up before today's race, and then that happens.
Well, things are improving with Daniel a lot. Already we after Australia, even though he did the race from the back, a very frustrating race from the back, but we've seen on his pace, the pace was there, so he gave us great confidence. And here yesterday he was obviously right up there as well for top 10 together with Yuki. So it is a positive. Then of course, no drivers want to lose time in the car, and we know that every second count and matter. Luckily, we had a tire test here in a couple of days, just to make sure we keep him running and keeping the rhythms. But I'm sure he will be 100% in China. And these sort of things happen. He has been around long enough to know that what matters is speed, and he has the speeds.
And we just saw Liam Lawson walk in. He's someone who cameras kept cutting to this weekend whenever something was happening around Daniel. Is there pressure though on the two race drivers? And in that sense, if there is, how impressive is it that Yuki's been responding to it?
There is always pressure, at this level for an F1 driver on the field is the same up and down the grid. There will be a huge pressure. It doesn't matter so much if the reserve driver is here or not. We have a very good reserve drivers with William. He has shown last year how impressively he could step in, but I really don't think it's adding any pressure on the guys. The highest pressure is the one they put on themselves to perform at the highest level at all the time, and that's probably what's driving them most.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Ryan. Appreciate your time.
Again,
he's been summoned outside.
Very good. Interesting.
What'd you say, Chris?
He's been summoned outside.
I just said he'd been summoned outside. Yeah, so sorry for the slightly abrupt ending to that one.
That's all right.
But yeah, I had to let him go.
That's good. I like this tweet from this X from ESPN F1. Carlos Sainz, the only driver with a 100% podium record this season. Still no drive for next year.
Still without a job. Still jobless, as he put it, as Carlos Sainz himself.
I'm sure he has offers. He just hasn't accepted one yet.
Yeah.
From what I understand, he's pretty close to doing so as well. He's going to make an early decision, quick decision. He's kind of fearing. It's actually after we went off air last time out in Melbourne, and I spoke to Carlos Sainz Sr. And there's so many spinning plates, but if you don't take a good option, then there's a chance you end up with pretty much nothing if you were waiting for something better that might not come. So I think he is not going to hang around for Mercedes and Red Bull and maybe make a decision before that.
And the fact that Lawson's queuing up and you've got people like Ricciardo potentially on the market if things don't go his way, it makes it very interesting,
So the question about Lawrence Stroll's
Lance
Stroll's
yes,
radio.
I'm ready to take this one on.
Yes,
I think it was an attempt to repeat history. It was that was an in-team. Remember when Alonso said how bad the Honda was, and now they're getting their arses handed to them by Honda, and so Stroll thought he'd bring up that about how his Mercedes was in top speed. And so, therefore, mimicking somewhat his teammate, but also making the point that he didn't feel as though he had a different package. Alonso didn't look as though he was having any of the same struggles, but Stroll was definitely having a tough weekend.
Chris, it still sounds like there's plenty going on around you.
There is, yeah. I've headed down the Ferrari because I really did try and line up Fred Vasseur. He's still doing TV interviews, but also I know that his next commitment is meant to be right now. So whether I get him after this or not, I do not know, but I'll put myself in a position that hopefully just to close the show, we get to hear from Fred. And that would tick off, the top 4 at least?
Yeah.
But if not, then I'll see if I can get him afterwards for midweek, if he's willing to speak. He does his print media, and once that's done, it's like he thinks, right, I can switch off now. So might miss the boat this weekend.
Speaking of switching off, this happens every year. China, my computer just said you're about to be logged off because It says no one in their
Yes,
right mind is
would be
still
sat
up
here
at
in the
3
studio
in
at 3 in the morning.
morning.
Yes. What are you doing?
Casey, can you come fix my computer as well as produce the show?
I don't think you need it for the last 4 minutes. You're all right. No, it's restarting. It's all gone.
Mine did too.
Yeah. Oh well.
The last thing I saw was was Andy P saying, "Hey, sorry I'm late to the party, y'all." That's the last thing I saw. Maybe I can look at it on my phone.
Well, somebody better get some more Jamesons for a friend.
For Kevin Kelly.
Kevin.
Chris, so got a week off until China, but we got Wheel to Wheel coming up. What are we going to talk about on Wheel to Wheel?
I think we're going to kind of talk about some of these Ferrari gains. I'm hoping to find out what McLaren are thinking because not their perfect weekend. Andrea Stella's here, Zach Brown's not. I want to get a word out of him, actually, maybe after we're off air. I'll see if I can get it, even if it's off the record. But I feel like they dropped the ball today, which we haven't seen too often.
Yeah.
There's also a mistake there from Piastri at the end that cost him a place. There's going to be a lot of focus on Williams and on that chassis and if it is repaired or not. And yeah, maybe we do kind of do some more sniffing around the driver market as well, because that is very, very fluid and moving very, very quickly. I don't know if Fred has time now. I think he's being called inside to go and do his print media, which might mean we're going to lose out. I've got 30 seconds apparently, so I'm gonna. It's all right. It's all my print colleagues that are going to be annoyed that I've held him up. So I'll ask one question of Fred. He's having a private conversation now, so it's going to be even later than that. So I'm gonna do my usual thing of wrapping as many questions into one question as possible. And if you can't tell, listeners, I am filling while he has this private conversation. But it's because I don't want to lose a second of the actual time I can get to ask him a question. So apologies to everyone in the studio sat there going, well, we could be talking right now.
Carry on.
This job sometimes. Yeah, it's just me stood talking at myself, looking at a massive decal of Charles Leclerc staring back at me, actually. It's quite disconcerting. But yeah, he's having a personal conversation that I think they're going to try and break off.
Chris, you should have talked about your upcoming drive of an F1 car.
Oh, we can do that on the.
What are you
I can give an update
driving?
on that actually on the midweek show. But Lotus E20 or the Alpine E20 down at Paul Ricard. But here's Fred. And Fred, I wanted to say, did you execute everything you could perfectly today to get third and fourth?
Yeah, I think it was a good Sunday for us. That overall, that strategy was perfect. The tire management was under control. The pit stop went well. That I'm not sure that we can do a much better job on Sunday. Where we have to improve this weekend, I think it's much more Saturday. Not to start from P4, P8. This will be the target for next week, or next race in 2 weeks' time. But I think we can be quite happy with our Sunday.
You're going to win some more races this year, aren't you?
Each Friday we are starting for this, but Red Bull is still a step ahead, and we'll have to do the perfect weekend for this.
Well, thank you very much for stopping by. Well done today. There we go. We got something out of him.
Brilliant. Excellent.
That's great. Well, we're down to 1 minute, boys and girls. I'm looking forward to see China just because it's been so long.
Yeah.
And to see what
it should throw up something.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly.
You know.
Exactly. What can it throw up at us? So
somebody else will
it's
be
a good
third.
track racing, that one.
It is. That long straight. Big long straight.
Bob Varsha, have you fallen asleep?
Yep.
What was the question?
Yeah. Who's on first?
With my eyes open?
Hey, if you are listening right now, everybody, thank you for tuning in because we know it's late and all the usuals are on YouTube. But thanks, everybody. And we are not going to be doing our regular Sunday night show next week because we're doing MotoGP in Austin. We're going to be on the microphones doing a radio show. But we'll have some content during the week. So go to our website, go to our social. Chris Medland, great job tonight, man.
Excellent, sir.
Or this afternoon for you. Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
All right. Talk to you soon, everybody.
Happy trails.